Hi everybody, welcome, greetings from Sydney, Australia, and I'm very excited to be bringing you this webinar here tonight. Now tonight is really all about going beyond your limits, and that's really what this topic has been built around. It's been built around Chapter 9 of the New Year's Revolution ebook, and if you haven't had a chance to download it, as soon as this is finished, jump on in as soon as you can. There really are so many incredible authors who've put some fantastic content in it to share with you. So I really would encourage you to download it if you haven't already done so. Now tonight, our topic is at the heart of my business. I'm Narelle Lee, and I founded the Performance Masters a few years ago to assist clients realize their fullest potential, really going from mediocre to magnificent, stepping out of the shadows and grabbing life by the throat. And a key part of what I do with my clients, and that's business clients, it's personal clients, and it's also sporting people, includes helping them move beyond their limits. But this topic is even more than that for me. It's more than just about my business. This topic goes to the heart of what I believe, and it reflects the approach that I apply in my business and my life on a daily basis. So when the opportunity turned up to be part of the New Year's Revolution, I just jumped at it. And I've also jumped at the chance to share what I've found works for me and share it with you. Now, before I get into the webinar tonight fully, there's just a few things that I need to let you know. Now, some of you might have already guessed that the webinar is being pre-recorded. So, tick, well done. Now, there's a number of reasons that I've done that. And one of them is that people who've joined New Year's Revolution are from all over the world. So a recorded webinar means that people can jump in or out at a time that suits their time zone. So I thought that that was probably a reasonably good approach to take. But the second reason that I'm recording this, it links right back to our topic. I'll be away for most of the time that the other authors are producing webinars. I'm going to be taking the first steps in achieving a 3-year plan to step way beyond my limits, way beyond what a few years ago I thought was even remotely possible. And that's to achieve one of my big, hairy, audacious goals. And to do that, I'm going to be pulling together all the techniques and strategies and all the information that I share with my clients and that I've included in the ebook as I take that journey personally. And I'll share a little bit more about that as we go through tonight's topic and just share with you sort of how it all ties together. The other thing is that because this webinar is pre-recorded, we're not going to have questions popping up like you would in a webinar that's going live throughout the webinar. So that means that I can't take questions, obviously, as I'm going along. But that doesn't mean to say that you can't ask questions. What I suggest you do is pop them down on a piece of paper or jot them down somewhere. And if you have any questions, comments or feedback, I'd love to hear from you. At the end of the webinar, I'll pop up the details as to how you can get in touch with me. And I'll be more than happy to come back to you, either answering your questions or just to acknowledge your feedback. Now, I'm also conscious that a pre-recorded webinar can just seem like an awful lot of talking. So what I've done is just popped in a few exercises or just some breaks in it where you can actually do a little bit of thinking. You might like to write down some notes. And at that point, when we get to that point in the webinar, I'll just invite you to play along with me. and it's totally up to you if you do it or not. You may choose to actually come back to the exercises later or not. It's totally up to you, and whatever you choose to do is totally fine. The other thing that I guess sort of flows on from all of that is that when a webinar is pre-recorded, it means that because we're not taking questions along the way, that we won't run quite as long as a live session. Now, again, that doesn't mean that you can't ask questions. I just can't stress enough that I'd love to hear from you. So just watch out for the slide at the end of the webinar, and it will have my contact details on it. Truthfully, I don't know how long this webinar will run. It will depend a little bit on how many sidetracks I avoid going down. I really do promise, though, I will be as respectful of your time as I possibly can be, but I just have to say this topic just gets me so excited because there is just so much in it. There is so much I could share with you, and I could talk about limits and going beyond all day long. It just absolutely floats my boat. And as I said, it is the cornerstone of what I do with my clients. But again, being respectful of your time, I promise I won't talk all day. And the last thing I just need to let you know is that I'm recording this at home. I normally record in a recording studio. So this is being recorded through my home computer. And I have to admit, I have my fingers and toes crossed that there are no emergency vehicles that go down the freeway that's nearby or down the main road, because I have a very large Alaskan Malamute that is pitch perfect when it comes to sirens. So I've absolutely got fingers and toes crossed that there is nothing that interferes with our recording tonight. Now tonight I'd like to share with you possibilities and new horizons rather than just work through the content in the ebook. What I'd really like to do is focus on helping you open the door to your possibilities, because to me that is just the most exciting and amazing thing, to think that there's just limitless possibilities out there. Now, as a starting point, I need to let you know how I think, because that sort of puts things into context for you. I come from the perspective, and the shot on the screen will give it to you, is that I believe that anything is possible if I choose to do it. And that's sort of, I guess, the caveat. If I choose to do it. I honestly believe that I can do whatever I choose to do. But when I say choosing, I mean that it's that deep, that inner, that choice that goes to your core. It's not just some conscious, top of mind, oh, I'm choosing to do this, and it's quite a flippant comment. I'm talking about that choice that goes to every fibre of your being. And the other thing that I always believe is that there is more than one way to get an outcome. I'd really love to get some feedback from you as to how that sits with you. Do you actually believe that nothing is impossible, that everything is possible if you choose to do it, and that there's more than one way to approach everything? Really would love to hear you. Come back to me and tell me what you think about that. But what I can tell you is that these are absolute core beliefs that I adopted years ago, and they've been with me ever since. But really, are they true? Who knows? I have no idea whether they're true or not. All I know is that they are true for me. So whether they're really true or not really doesn't matter. And that's a key point, because any belief you hold, if it's serving you and it's serving the greater good, then it's ecological and it's absolutely right for you. It doesn't matter whether nobody else believes it. But if it's serving you and serving you positively and it's serving the greater good, then it is absolutely right for you. So, as I said, rather than just sort of go through the key points in the chapter and reiterate and regurgitate what's already, some of you I would suggest have read, or some of you are going to read, I'd really like to spend some time on limits and limiting beliefs. Because I'm taking the viewpoint that if you do something that you haven't done before, means that you've actually gone through a boundary of some description. And therefore, you must actually have a new experience. So every time you do something different that you've never done before, you experience something new. Just think about that. Just stop and think about that. How many times a day do you actually experience something new? Even people that like things exactly the same. I wonder just how many new things you actually experience every day and don't really think about. Interesting. Sorry, I was off on a tangent. So one of the things I'd like to do is pose some questions. I said a little earlier that we'd look at some questions and some little exercises just to break up me talking. And the first one, I really would like you to stop and think and really ponder, what is a limit? Yeah, what's a limit? Have you ever seen one? I don't think I have. But if you have, I'd love to hear from you, and I'd love to hear about your experience. What does a limit sound like? And it certainly doesn't sound like the dog next door. If you touched a limit, what would it feel like? Would it be hard? Would it be smooth? Would it be squishy, furry? What would a limit feel like? Can you put a limit in a wheelbarrow? I don't know. I'm just throwing up questions because I don't actually have a picture in my mind of what a limit looks like. I'd really love to know what you think. So please hang on to the end and grab my email and shoot me an email, because I'd really, really like to hear what you think. Okay, here's the thing. Because we can't share our thoughts as we're going through this webinar tonight, I'm going to put it out there and suggest that because we can't see a limit, we can't smell a limit, can't hear a limit, that a limit is something that exists only in an individual's mind. That we each have our own limits, and they only exist in our mind. What do you think? Now, I'm sure some of you will be thinking, hang on a minute, what about physical limits? And this is a really valid question, because as I've been thinking more and more and more about limits, I actually started to think about this, well, people talk about physical limits and physical limitations. But even those I'm going to challenge, and I'm challenging them from a personal perspective. And again, this is my own belief. You may disagree, you may reject it, it's absolutely fine. But for some years, I've been trapped by my thinking of just around the whole mobility thing. I have an ankle that went through some extensive reconstructive surgery, transplants, a whole lot of things that has a different degree of flexibility and mobility to my other one. And I've seen a number of doctors and allied health professionals who've said to me, well, it's as good as it's going to get. And for some time, I've chosen to believe that, yep, okay, yep, they're the experts, as good as it's going to get. But lately, I've been really challenging that thinking. And started to think about, well, who says that I have to accept the words that I've been told, that my ankle will never be more mobile? Who says? Now, at the risk of disappearing down another side track, if my body regenerates its cells every so often, the question for me is then, why can't my body generate normal cells rather than scar cells? Now, I have no medical training. I am not in any way, shape or form an expert on any of this, other than I am an expert on my own body and my mind. But I am now challenging that thinking that says this is as good as it's going to get. And interesting, since I started to think that way and started to think there's more than one solution to how I'm going to fix this, I have actually found a chiropractor and a soft tissue expert who believes that he can help me improve and recreate the mobility that I once enjoyed. He doesn't think I'm nuts. He shares my belief that this is possible. Now, how it turns out, I have no idea. But I'm trusting the process, and I'm also trusting that there are no limits. So by choosing to reject the limited thinking and taking action, now that's the other key, and taking action. I'm not just sitting on the couch going, I reject what I've been told about my mobility. I'm actually taking a lot of action. I'm now seeing that there's a lot more possibilities. Things that I hadn't even thought of, things that I hadn't even considered. And with the right training, I now believe I can achieve race times that could put me on the start line of the World Championship Ironman race in Kona in a couple of years' time. So you're sort of thinking, well, what's that got to do with what we're talking about? Well, it has everything to do with what we're talking about, because I said earlier I'd come back to why I was pre-recording this webinar. That's why. I'm actually taking the first steps to move towards my goal of being on the start line of the World Championships and also being on the finish line, because I'm travelling to Kona just to see the start area. To actually, the race won't be on, so I won't have the experience of the race, but I will actually physically stand on the pier, swim out from the pier, immerse myself in the swim, then take in the rest of the course. And anchor the experience, anchor the visual, the things that I would see if I was in the race, so that I will create strong, powerful anchors and visualizations that I'll then be able to meld into some very, very powerful visualizations to help me move towards my goal. Now, a year ago, I wouldn't have believed that that was possible. I would not have believed that I would even be contemplating racing in Kona. I have now pushed through that limiting belief. I am choosing to believe that that is possible. What have you got that you think in your life is not possible? So I've moved from believing that I would never contemplate being good enough to qualify to now thinking that just maybe with the right training, I can. Now, the only thing that's changed in this whole picture is my mindset around what I'm physically capable of doing. Nothing else has changed. Now, it's our beliefs that create our reality. So many of these beliefs, and look, a lot of them you will not even be consciously aware of, have been with you for a very long time. Most of them since before the age of 7. So if you're my generation, they've been around for quite a while. So if the beliefs that you've got aren't giving you the results that you want now, then it's time to go to work on changing them to something that's aligned to where you want to go in your life. And a belief really is just a way of explaining the evidence you saw of what you saw at a particular point in time. You know, it's sort of how you made sense of what you were experiencing. But the great thing is, and this is what I love about this stuff, is that it's your interpretation and your explanation. So therefore you own it. No one else owns it. So the great news is, because it's yours, you can change it. And that is what I love about doing this. This is what I love about working with my clients. And just the way my own life is unfolding is that I know I've got the power to change things, which I just think is just extraordinary. So I'm going to put it to you. So if you're ready to make some changes and step beyond your limits, now's the time to start. So are you ready? So what I've got for you now is a series of 6 steps that you can use time and time again to change limiting beliefs to beliefs that will support what it is that you want to achieve. It's a process that you can do over and over and over again, and it works no matter what the belief is. I use it with people in sport, I use it in business, and I use it with personal clients. And this stuff is tried and tested. So I invite you to play along with me, and let's see what comes out the other side, shall we? Now, the first step is to identify what it is that's holding you back. What is it? Is it a bit of a speed hump in the way? Is it a roadblock? Is it a whopping great fence? What is it? What is it that's holding you back? And the answer to that question, you're going to have to be brutally honest with yourself. Because that is really actually quite a tough question. But what I don't want you to do at this point in time is to worry about when you started to believe it or where it came from, any of that. Just identify what are the beliefs that are holding you back. What are the limiting beliefs? Now this can take a little bit of time, so we'll keep moving through this. But you can revisit this exercise, as I said, over and over again. And when you get to the point where you think, no, I've got them all, yep, that's it, just ask yourself again, what else? What else? And just ask yourself that a few times, just to make absolutely sure that you've teased out all the things that are getting in the way. Now, some of you might get a sense that there's something in the way, but you can't bring anything to mind. Don't worry. If this occurs, there's a simple way around it. Just simply ask yourself, okay, if I did know what's holding me back, what would it be? And trust. Trust what your unconscious mind gives you. You might be surprised. You might find things just pop into your head and sort of you almost think, well, where on earth did that come from? It's your unconscious mind at work. So when you've done that step, you move on to the next step. And this is really, the fun sort of starts here. So take a few moments to write down a belief that you'd like to replace that old belief with. And sort of thinking back to the example I gave you of my ankle not being, my belief was that the ankle was, as good as it was going to get, and that I was running and doing my sport. This was about the best time I was ever going to do. And I was happy with that, just to get to the finish line. The belief I have chosen to replace it with is that I have the capability of competing and finishing the World Championship race. Big difference. Big difference. And when you start to look at the replacement beliefs, this is the start of moving past the roadblocks that are between you and where you want to go. But the great thing, and this is really exciting, the great thing is when you're choosing a new belief, why not go for broke? Why not get the biggest, humongous goal and belief that you can get? Absolutely ramp it up, wind it up, rev it up, and make it something that really inspires you and will move you forward. Go all out. Now that takes us to the third step. So what we've done so far is you've identified, and one of the easiest ways to do this is actually just to divide a page into two. One side, all the stuff that's holding you back, all the beliefs that are no longer serving you. And then on the other side, what you want to replace them with. Now we're going to go back to the old beliefs. When you think about those old beliefs, what evidence was there that really supported it? Now, in my case, oh, well, the ankle's a bit stiff. Oh, well, they must be right. So think about your old beliefs. What evidence have you got that really supported that belief, that just kept reinforcing it? You might be surprised what comes out of that as well. Now again, still looking at your old beliefs, what was the payoff from having it? Because there's always a payoff. Always. And I know that some of you may say, no, definitely there was no payoff. No. Trust me, there is. There is always a payoff. So if nothing's coming to mind, ask yourself a similar question to the one that I suggested in the first step. And if I were to know, what would it be? And sometimes when I do this with clients, you can sort of see it's almost like this light bulb goes on. It's like, oh, you can sort of just see this dawning of awareness of it suddenly becomes apparent as to what the payoff was. And it can be the most, from a rational, conscious perspective, you look at it and go, oh, what was I thinking? That could not, where did that come from? But on some level, it was, the payoff was that it protected you from something, or it kept you didn't sort of have to stick your neck out, whatever it was. But there was always a payoff. It might be that the payoff was that you got sympathy, or you got people taking care of you, or it's limitless what the sorts of things that the payoff can be. So work through your old beliefs, the old limiting beliefs, and really get clear about what was the payoff of that behaviour. And now you're still looking at the old beliefs, but then could there be another explanation for the evidence? So could the evidence actually be about something else and not about that belief at all? Think about it. Just because you saw something, does it actually mean what you think it meant? Just challenge whether or not there is another explanation, and if so, what could it be? Because if we actually come up with another explanation, the evidence supporting the old belief that's not serving you crumbles away. So therefore, there's nothing to support the belief. And now for the last step, and this is the fun one. This is the goodie. Find all the evidence that supports your new belief. Now this can feel a bit strange when you first start out doing it. But your mind is making new neural pathways to support the belief. So it's sort of like building a muscle. When you go to the gym, it's a bit uncomfortable at first, but after a while, you find that the muscle, you develop the muscles, and it all just gets a lot easier. And the repetition, it deepens the pathways, the neural pathways, and so it all feels quite normal and quite comfortable. It's like perhaps when you first started to ride a bike or something, it all felt a bit awkward and, gosh, I hope I don't fall off. But then you just got more and more confident, and piece of cake now. Same sort of stuff. This is as you build the neural pathways and strengthen and deepen them, the evidence that supports your new beliefs just becomes par for the course. And once that happens, your behaviours change and the behaviours drive results. So you start to see different results. That gives you more evidence, and that then goes back and supports the beliefs. So it all goes around again. But one point I do need to make here is that your focus has to be on what you want, not on what you don't want. So the way you language your beliefs is very important. Rather than saying, oh, I'm not overweight, reframe the belief to something that moves you forward, saying that I'm choosing to be healthy or fit, and look for evidence of that. And that might be the way you're choosing to perhaps adjust your eating, or it could be that you start to do some exercise, whatever it is. But just absolutely make sure that you're stating things in the positive and stating them, your beliefs about moving forward, as opposed to things that you want to move away from. So does that all make sense? Awesome. And as I said, I would love some feedback. I would love to hear from you, because this is what I'm giving you tonight really is only the tip of the iceberg. There is so much material in all of the area of peak performance and endless possibilities and all of that sort of work that involves helping clients grow, that I could certainly go on about this all night, as I said, but I'm not. I promise. Now, I am conscious of time and conscious that this has been a sort of a one-directional webinar. And the other thing is that your time is valuable. So with that in mind, I'd really like to just sum up with leaving you with another key to success. And that is that moving beyond your limits and experiencing something new, it is absolutely essential that you actually work at it and you take action. You've got to do something. And you have to do it consistently. And I think I talked about that in the chapter about consistent results and doing things consistently. But if you do, you will see the results you are looking for. Because each time you step into your new beliefs and take action, you will experience something new. And I just think that's amazing. I just think that is absolutely fantastic. So I'm really not sure about you, but I have really find this stuff exciting. So, as this slide says, life is what I make happen. I take action and step up and take responsibility and make it happen. And absolutely you can. I'd like to thank you for being on this webinar. It was only a relatively short one, but as I said, it was a one-sided conversation. So to go on any longer, I think probably would have been way too long. So I'd like to thank you for being on the webinar. I really look forward to hearing from you. I'm happy to take questions. I'd love your feedback. I'd love your comments. So as promised, here's my contact details, my email, my website. So please, please get in touch with me. And I am just so glad we've had no sirens, we've had no howling malamutes. So wherever you are, good night and thanks for listening. I'm Narelle Lee and it's been an absolute pleasure.